everything that nature has given us is a form of medicine. And the food can be a medicine and also can act as a poison.
Dr. Vara is an Ayurvedic physician, and she holds so much wisdom in the realm of gut healing and hormone healing. And I'm so excited that you're here because I've been wanting to bring on an Ayurvedic expert for a long time because I see so much of Ayurveda being shared, which is so beautiful that it's becoming more popular. And yet, social media can only take you so deep into a science that's thousands of years old. So I'd love to hear from you, your description, what is Ayurveda? We could probably be here for a long time, but I'd love to just hear in your own words for those who are new to Ayurveda, what is the Ayurvedic science?
Ayurveda is like a way of life, I would say, more or less. It's one of the most ancient wisdom that ever existed. And it is so profound and also so practical because you were talking about the social media and stuff. And like, I think for many years it has been in the West, and many practitioners have been talking about Ayurveda as well, long before social media came. And there is a lot of information overload right now. But Ayurveda, the word itself says like it's a science that teaches us everything about how we can live longer. Ayuhu means in that word Ayurveda. Ayu means the lifespan, and Veda is study. You want to learn and know about what are the practices and how one should lead a lifestyle so that you live longer. That's the whole point. So it is like a 360 degrees view of life and how a person should eat and move with the nature. The whole point of Ayurveda is that you're not just like a being that you wake up and you do things and you don't have connection with what's going on around you, but it is about you realizing that you are part of everything that's surrounding you. So that is what I think we are also lacking right now. Like we are doing and thinking like we don't have any bearing on what we are doing and what the nature has us. But Ayurveda is, I think, makes sense because to bring us back to where our place in this whole equation of universe and everything. So I hope I made sense.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. And, I think Ayurveda is becoming more popular. At least I know where I live in the Pacific Northwest of the US. And I'm so grateful that it is because, most humans on this world, on this earth right now would agree that the earth is suffering. And as we see the climate, shifting and, the nature being vulnerable, we see that same dis-ease in our own bodies. And so I love that there's that reminder with Ayurveda. And I think it's so important because so many people listening to this live might be completely new to Ayurveda. So I just wanted to start there. I know that there's a lot more that we could go into, but that was a really beautiful description. Thank you.
Thank you.
And today we're going to talk, about some of I love some of the content that you share around gut health. And one of the things that really got my attention was this conversation that you started on probiotics. So if people here come from a Western background, you kind of learn in the West that if you have a gut issue, you should buy probiotics and start taking them every day and maybe even just take them every day, right? But you share a different opinion. So what is your opinion on probiotics, and in what way does Ayurveda support the gut through supporting the whole system?
So I think to talk about that, it's a very huge topic again. Probiotics are considered as a good thing. Yes, like, like taking, when you have a lack in your body, like you have low iron, then you start taking iron. And I think it has become a notion that due to many reasons, I would say that we are thinking like when you have something low or when your gut is not working without actually understanding what is the root cause of your gut having an issue, we are just jumping onto things like just, I'll supplement with probiotic and then I'll be fine. Yes, it is a very good thing if if there is no other lack or there is no other root cause other than you lacking that just that gentle bacteria in your gut, then this will actually work. But it's more than that, right? For having a gut health issue, one of the most important key factor, because I work with a lot of women and men having same kind of issues and stuff, it is the routine. So like when you wake up in the morning, and what are you doing from the moment you wake up in the morning, from whatever we're putting inside our mouth or to digest that, but also what are we absorbing in the form of information. Like we have to be able to digest everything. Ayurveda clearly says that our Agni, or the fire, that inner fire within all of us, it should have the capability to not just digest the physical food, solid food or liquid food we are consuming, but it should have the capability to digest even the information, thoughts, all the things that we are gathering through our senses. So, and often routines, like people will wake up and they start to eat all these nice organic food and all these things. But if you are not paying attention to whether you have hunger, are you eating when you're actually feeling hungry, or you're just eating like, oh, it's time, 9 o'clock, it's breakfast time, I just have to eat, or oh, I have a meeting now, I just need to eat and go run to attend to that meeting. So it's more or less about understanding that before you supplement, before you take a probiotic, or before you take this irons, all these nice things, these are good for health. I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but you do need to understand that something like a illness or disease, happening inside our body is more to do with your mental health, like mentally what you're absorbing, and your routine, like, how is your routine in a day. And then comes the diet as well, like whether you're actually paying attention to the diet, food that you're eating in front of you. You may have this amazing seasonal food, but you're not actually paying attention to what you're eating, and you're just on your phone or on some screen or something, then your body won't be able to absorb optimally. It will still be, maybe you may be able to digest it, but not to the extent that you want to digest it and absorb the vital nutrients from it. So this is what I think, to talk about how I actually help these things. In the modern day and life, we are rushing, right? Like everything is about like time, doing it on time, deadline. These are the main factors that we are focusing on. And then more on less about the quality of doing something. Like eating food, then how qualitatively are you enjoying that wholesome experience, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. And, for those listening, like type a yes in the chat if you're at a restaurant, or like I think about being in the airport and everyone's rushing to eat and everyone's on their phone, right? And especially people who are alone, it's like there's almost a shame in being alone and just being present with your food. So we've got to look busy, and that busyness keeps our body from fully focusing on the food that we're eating. That was such a beautiful explanation. And I love to just go into that concept of Agni, because I think when I started my healing journey, I thought, oh, I'll just eat a salad. A salad is good for me, right? We think a salad is healthy. But in Ayurveda, it's so much less about what you eat and more about what you can digest. And I think that's a very foreign concept for people. So what is Agni, and how is the health of our entire body connected to it?
So Agni is like, Agni, the word Sanskrit word, literally means like fire. So think of Agni as this inner fire, but it is there in every corner of our body. So like everywhere, from our mind to thinking thoughts to every part of our body. So this Agni is the vital energy that we need, or our body needs, to absorb anything that you're putting into your body. Without having an optimal Agni, our body won't be able to digest it and absorb whatever you're consuming. So this consumption, with this information overload as well as the food overload or less metabolism or lack of exercise that we are facing as a generation and as well as a race, I would say Agni is this ultimate strength and force that can actually keep a person decide whether someone is going to live for 90 years or 100 years versus someone is going to have something a lesser lifespan as well. So it is that energy, and Ayurveda says that Agni is the root of immunity. Agni is the root of strength, not just physical strength, but also emotionally. Someone to wake up in the morning and then to have that enthusiasm, like, oh, I woke up in the morning and I want to do something. I want to achieve something. Oh, I'm looking forward to doing something. So this kind of enthusiasm that comes from having a good Agni inside our body. So there are like different types of Agni, but the Agni, that fire that resides in our belly, is the most important one for our conversation today, which is like gut and all that. It is called Jatar Agni. So the one which resides in our belly is called Jatar Agni, and this is the Agni that is responsible for digestion, assimilation, nutrition, and absorption. So it's like, and it is dependent upon factors like what you're eating, like, the seasonal food and the routine, like waking up with sun and eating with sun. That is like the most important factor. And how heavy and lighter your meal is. In Ayurveda, there is no sense of calories or counting calories like, oh, are you eating carbohydrates? Are you eating protein? These are not the concepts that we talk about. But we talk about whether the meal that you're eating is either it is heavier or lighter in nature. So we should always try to eat foods that are lighter in nature rather than heavier in nature. So people who eat these kind of lighter foods live longer, and they have lesser diseases, they have lesser problems, they have more immunity. So I think to introduce the topic, these are few things I think I would like to talk, which is easier as well for us to absorb on this, wider platform maybe.
Yeah, and there's this kind of trend going around right now in like Western nutrition, which is that you should eat a really heavy meal at breakfast. Like you should eat 30 grams of protein, which is, kind of a Western quantitative way of looking at food, but you should eat a heavy breakfast, and that helps balance your hormones. And I know in terms of the health of Agni, Ayurveda might disagree. So what do you think about that idea from an Ayurvedic perspective?
Oh, so saying this, I might come across this, like opposite of what I think more westernized nutritional perspective and aspect. But Ayurveda says that we should have a lighter breakfast and lighter dinner. So there is a very pure logical. This is this awesomeness of Ayurveda, I would say. Everything, every line, even the tiny line that they shared about health has a logic behind it. And it's not like without a basis for it. So for this basis is that Ayurveda says that our Agni or fire is maintained or optimally balanced by the strength of sun. Because we, as humans, our whole waking up, all this cycle, everything is dependent upon sun's energy. Ayurveda says that internally as well, our digestion and metabolism are actually working on the same clock as sun. When the sun is higher, then your digestive strength is higher. That is why during the lunch time between 10 to 2 or between 12 to 2 is when in most parts of the world, sun strength is high. So during this period, if you eat a heavy meal, for example, you want to eat, people who are eating meat and stuff, this is the ideal time to consume that, because meat as a food, despite of whatever the animal meat may be or whatever the protein may be, it actually is heavier for our body, inherently heavy. So lunch is the main meal that should be heavier. The breakfast and dinner should be lighter. There is also a logic here. The breakfast, when we are waking up first thing in the morning, like, when you're trying to start your car first thing in the morning, and then you start first, you go on first gear and then you go on second. You don't never jump on like fifth gear or fourth gear as soon as you start your car, right? So similarly, in the morning, 6 to 10 period is called a kapha kala, like one of the doshas. So during this period, you're just waking up. You have done nothing but just sleeping or lying in one place whole night. So your metabolism first thing in the morning is slow. So your Agni is also slow. So during this period, if you start eating like cold things, like, when you're starting like a wildfire in a big camp or somewhere, and then you're just starting and you're putting all these nice things to make it a bigger fire, and you go pour some cold water on it or something like it, instead of some warm logs, you use something which is wet there. What will happen? It won't sustain that fire, right? So that simple logic can be applied here. First thing in the morning, our Agni is very low and it is like mild fire going on. So you need to give it something warm, something like a ghee or something which can actually make it burn bright and then ensure that it stays like that. So that is why you have to eat something light, something warm, not a heavy meal. Then it can actually help for it to improve over the time. And then you start moving through the day, then also your metabolism naturally increases, right? So that is the logic for breakfast and lunch. And dinner, it's just logical, after eating dinner, what are we doing? We are not doing much after eating dinner, right? Most of us are trying to wind off and try to set ourselves physically and mentally ready for the sleep. So during this period as well, if you're eating like something, I would say modern lifestyle, maybe we all, like most of the people and modern folks, usually order pizza as dinner and then they start eating. And 90% of the time next morning, everybody, like most of them, unless someone having very good digestive fire, have heaviness or bloating. And they'll be wondering why, everyone feels that sluggishness when they eat heavy food, right? This is because of not just pizza is like a heavy food, but also the time that you're eating. You're eating it at dinner time or evening. So I think that is what Ayurveda recommends meals wise. Like we have to eat lighter morning and evening and heavier during lunchtime.
Thank you so much. And, I'm always just brought back to the brilliance of Ayurveda because it is based on the observation of nature. When you speak, it's like there's this feeling in my body of, oh yeah, that makes sense. That feels right. Thinking about the sun and the strength of sun and how it's connected to our Agni, it just makes sense in our human bodies because we are a part of nature. And that's something that we've so forgotten. And I think that for people discovering Ayurveda or practicing Ayurveda and integrating into their life, there's really one of the greatest benefits of Ayurveda is that it shines so much in preventative, and of course there's a strong clinical background. But I know for me, I didn't grow up with any traditions or any knowledge that was passed down from my parents as to how to keep my body healthy. And in the West, so many of us only discover holistic health or start taking care of ourselves because we've gotten sick. And that's really when we go into the Western medical system when we're sick. And at that point, once we have a chronic condition, right, it can be hard to go back. So we're going to talk about meat. I'm not going to skip over that. I still want to talk about that. But I want to talk about this concept of dinacharya because you've been talking about it and this daily routine and these daily ways that we can align ourselves with nature and take care of our bodies and keep our bodies healthy. So in terms of women, and thinking about women and the hormones that our bodies need to create and, the possibility for pregnancy and postpartum and breastfeeding, what are some of the most important things that women can do? And I know for Vata, Pitta, Kapha, it can be different, but what are some simple ways that we can take care of our bodies as women through daily dinacharya?
It's amazing, actually. Dinacharya, the word means, dina means day, charya means a ritual, a routine that you're doing, like a self-care thing that you are supposed to do day in and day out. And another level of Ayurveda dinacharya is like one of the first things that we learn. When we start our degree, the first and foremost thing is talking about why it is vital for us to maintain health. As human beings, it is, Ayurveda says, like for achieving anything, you could have passion, power, you could have money, everything. But at the end of the day, if you're not a healthy person to enjoy any of it, there is no point of it. So that is what is explained in the first things. And the second thing they come is like, okay, we talked about why you need to stay healthy, but for a healthy person to stay healthy, daily practices to have that routine, to wake up like, Brahma Muhurta or before sun rises, and then to have some quiet time to sit down and then meditate. Then they talk about practices because we were talking about women's health. One of the, I think, an amazing practice is to incorporate Abhyanga. Abhyanga is like, applying oil, warm oil on our body. And the practice of Abhyanga comes from a a concept called snehana. Sneha means fat. And
sneha, love, right?
Yeah, sneha also means like I'm from a place where we speak Telugu, and in our language, snehatudu means like a friend. So sneha, that word actually means like someone you love, someone you have that gentle, nurturing relationship with them. So the same snehana here means that when you're applying fat on your body, it's almost like your self-loving practice. So I think as modern women who are having a lot of things to do, many roles and responsibilities, and there is so many things that are on our plate versus our mothers and grandmothers who had lesser on their plates comparatively. I would say this abhyanga, or just applying that warm oil on our body, is like someone actually hugging you. And I think a very profound practice, and it can be practiced in most of the seasons except for kapha seasons like spring, and even during summer we can practice this. I think if you want me to name the top practice for us women, I would say abhyanga, and it should be applied on all our body including our yoni, and it does wonders. I have worked with women who has struggled for I would say 6-7 years, who are on anxiety pills due to different kinds of stresses and chronic health disorders in their life. And just by incorporating abhyanga and understanding its benefits, they were able to heal themselves and come out of those, stress and those patterns, those cycles, and eventually heal themselves. So abhyanga is a very, very great practice. That is number one, I would say. And there is dry brushing. I think you must have heard it is a very famous practice in the West, using dry brush and everything. In Ayurveda, it is said that because back then there are no things like those kind of tools, but in Ayurveda, they describe use powder like besan, just chickpea flour. And they also talk about using triphala powder to rub on our skin, and it is good for some of us who has the tendency to hold back, kapha kind of body individuals who's not so great at letting go of stuff, who are emotionally and physically tend to carry that heaviness in their body. For them, dry brushing and or using some gentle powder to scrub is a very good way to encourage the fluid, especially the lymph and excess kapha, to move out of our body. I think these are very generalized, but also really important practices that all of us at different ages, women at different ages of our life can still incorporate these two daily practices.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan of Abhyanga. Once I discovered Abhyanga, I think I was 19 the first time I went to India. And it changed my life forever. Just that daily practice of putting oil on my body and connecting with my body in that way. Everyone around me is so grateful when I do my Abhyanga because it helps me so much. And I think it's so profound, something so simple. It seems so simple. Really, I just put, oil on my body and give myself a massage. But the grounding that happens for your entire body and the impact on your nervous system is just incredible. I talk about Abhyanga so much. So thank you for naming that. And I know right now, we've been in spring, we're starting to look towards summer. So for dry brushing, would that be a good practice that people in springtime and more humid kapha environments could incorporate as well?
Yes, for the spring, dry brushing is a good practice actually. And I think, thanks for highlighting that. Because dry brushing or just udvartana is the Sanskrit word or Ayurvedic word which is used for that. And they talk about both a gentle one where you can put a little bit of water or some oil or use it after you do abhyanga. Or if someone has a lot of skin is also quite oily and stuff, unctuous, for them they can just directly use a dry brush or maybe powder without any kind of moisture or anything. That will also work. But yes, for spring it's a great practice to include dry brushing. Most of these practices, especially abhyanga or udvartana, should be practiced before shower and to just gently wash our body afterwards, or just warm bath or warm shower. This is what is recommended.
I was thinking because, one of the recommendations, wake up, in that Vata time, right? Where you can connect with yourself and connect with that Vata time before the sun comes up. But for me as a mother, and I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I was so tired in postpartum, I really lost my practice of doing that because any kind of sleep that I would get was like so needed. So what about for women who are really depleted, or for women who are breastfeeding or newly postpartum? Should they also get up really early in the morning, or is there a different routine that they can follow?
I think in that case, you could look at the season. Generally, if you are empty stomach, the key factor here that they are talking about, it's not an ideal way, but given that practicality that if you're breastfeeding and you're not getting enough sleep, but you still want to feel like you are getting that nourishment or that warm feeling, then that if you are on empty stomach, you can still apply a little bit of warm oil and then take a quick shower. Normally, when we are doing Abhyanga or applying oil, it is good if we leave it on for, maybe a couple of minutes or half an hour and then take a shower also. It actually helps the oil to sink into your body and also helps for it to nourish our skin and all those, external, even our scalp and hair. So, but if you are lack on time and all, a quick way is to ensure that you are on empty stomach, but you can still actually practice it. It's not ideal to do it in the evening time. It's not recommended. Even though we are applying fat externally, it still has to get absorbed into the skin. And as the evening progresses, it can be quite cold, and even the external Abhyanga can be difficult on someone's body and digestion. So it can impair your Agni. So that is why it's good if you can do it. Try to do it when the sun is around and on empty stomach. I think you can still practice that.
That's great. So for, mothers who are breastfeeding or really depleted, who can't get up in the early morning hours, to know that we can still practice Abhyanga on an empty stomach and have that nourishment in the morning. Thank you for that. And I see some questions. So one question is, what oil should we use? Do you want to go into that just quickly, a few options?
So generally, Abhyanga as a practice is a Vata nourishing practice. Vata is one of the 3 doshas and the first dosha that is responsible for our all sorts of movements, thinking, thoughts, anything in our body to move, from our eyelids to blood circulation, our bleeding, like our monthly cycle, even for it to move out of our body safely and in a pain-free way. Vata is the main nourishing dosha. And Vata is also the key dosha for us women. So like for us to stay healthy and have healthy conception, kids, all the important aspects of our whole life, Vata is like our key dosha. So, and Abhyanga or applying fat is like a primary practice for Vata. So one of the warming oils is sesame oil. It's the best type of oil that we should use. In the West, I see that some practitioners and some also people are using a lot of coconut oil, but generally I don't recommend that because it is a very nourishing fat still, but as per Ayurveda, coconut has cooling properties. So it has that same properties like Vata, even though it is still a fat. So it can actually aggravate Vata if you are using it regularly, and it can bring that, feeling of restlessness and all these things. So just be mindful of this, but still you can use coconut oil in a season like summer where sun is very, very hot shining upon you. You can still use it, and you are living in a very hot place. It doesn't matter whatever the season, you still feel very hot. Even in those scenarios, warming it up a little bit, you can still use it. But generally, sesame oil is the best kind of oils. Ghee is also another very good fat that you can use for Abhyanga. It is balancing for both Vata as well as, hot bodies like Pitta as well. So it is also a great choice.
I actually was just trying to find in my car back here, I have my huge bottle of sesame oil that I always travel with. So thank you for that. So sesame oil that's the best recommendation. And you gave some options for coconut oil or ghee. I remember the first time I put ghee on my body, it was like one of the best days ever. It just feels so hydrating and nourishing. So I want to talk a little bit about meat and what Ayurveda says on meat consumption. And I remember looking at some of your stories that you posted, and you had a great differentiation, which is that, what you're sharing when we talk about this isn't your opinion, that it's what the sacred texts of Ayurveda say. And I think that that's so important because so much of Western health is opinion and is different practitioners saying, well, I think this, no, I think this. But in Ayurveda, it's recorded in sacred texts. And so as a physician, you're communicating those sacred texts rather than inserting your opinion. So what does Ayurveda say about meat consumption? Because I know in the West, there's a lot of, confusion between the systems of yoga and the systems of Ayurveda. And so people get confused with the idea of ahimsa in yoga and apply it to Ayurveda. So tell us, what does Ayurveda say about meat consumption? Is it a vegetarian science? What do the texts say?
As per Ayurveda, we have to give that, the main goal of Ayurvedic science is to ensure that you understand as a person to utilize everything that you can get from nature and how it impacts your health. This is the main motto or main everything Ayurveda is about. That's why they talk about how even sunlight affects you, rainwater affects you, everything that is in naturally available. So the natural food is also includes meat. In the old days or when Ayurveda was written, there were so many, like all sorts of meat that was used, and all food is considered as sacred as per Ayurveda. Even the meat is considered as a food that actually nourishes our physical as well as mental body. But still, there are contexts or there are situations where meat is not at all recommended, and there are conditions and diseases where meat is used, because as a whole meat is considered as a heavy but also a nourishing kind of food. So it is actually gives warmth to our body, it is nourishing, but at the end of the day, whether you want to choose that as a food or not is entirely you as a person will decide. But Ayurveda as a science will talk about all the foods that are on the table. It cannot include meat as, not as a food. It is still a food consumed by many people at that time as well as now, right? So Ayurveda doesn't have an opinion that it doesn't talk about whether meat is good or bad as a philosophical concept, but it is all about it is a nourishing food or not. Is it healthy or not? This is the only parameters Ayurveda takes into consideration. And when you're following a Ayurvedic diet or something, it is not entirely necessary that you need to eat just the vegetarian food. In some conditions, yes, it is very helpful because vegetarian food is lighter in nature. Earlier, I was talking about if you are eating mainly a lighter food, people who eat more lighter food tend to live longer. This is given actually. Like if you have a very physical lifestyle, you're a active person and you eat lighter food, your digestive system survives for longer or thrives for longer, then you live longer. And on the other hand, there are, even in vegetarian foods, there are heavy foods and lighter foods as well. Ayurveda doesn't say that meat is good or bad. Ayurveda considers all foods that are naturally available as food. It's only how it impacts is what our health is what Ayurveda considers. And there are even medicines which are made with meat in Ayurveda and used in certain special conditions and stuff. But yeah, in the modern day, I think this is a personal choice. I am a vegetarian. I don't eat anything, meat or anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can come here and say that it is Ayurveda is all about vegetarianism. That's not true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, there's such a great differentiation here between Ayurvedic science and what's happening kind of. I just know in social media, there's a lot of trends of like what I eat in a day as a nutritionist or as a, and people see other people eating this way, whether it's with meat or not. And they think, oh, well, this person is eating this way, so I should eat that way too. But in reality, as we talked about before, it's really about your body and what your body can handle, what your body can digest, what your body needs in order to thrive. And for each one of us, it's going to be so different.
Absolutely. I would say that there is this, what we call in the modern day, there is this feeling that just because something is healthy doesn't mean that it is for you. There are so many healthy things in this universe right now, or in the world right now. Like they are naming, one day they're saying coffee is very healthy. Next day they are coming and telling us that coffee is not healthy if you drink it at that time. So this word of healthy is such a conflict word in the modern day. So supplements are healthy, but whether that is what I always say, like if you are taking like 10 different supplements a day, or if you are thinking this is healthy, that is healthy, this is healthy, but if you can't digest any of these things at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether how much healthier, how supreme the food that you're eating, like whether it's organic or colorful, seasonal, all these labels that we are talking about or taking into consideration only matter if you can digest it, if it suits you at a given moment of time. This is another thing I would like to, because the same concept of Ayurveda considers all food as medicine. Everything that nature has given us is a form of medicine, and the food can be a medicine and also can act as a poison if the person who is consuming it doesn't have the wisdom to understand and absorb it. Then they can end up in both, either the ways, right? Mm-hmm. So it's up to you or your knowledge and understanding, which makes all the difference. Your practices, you as a person having that informed wisdom to know to make the right decision.